Hello and welcome to your volunteer orientation at Grace. Thank you for your interest in lending a hand. We couldn't do what we do without people like you. Our volunteer culture is a strong and enthusiastic one, and if you choose to get involved, I can promise that you will meet some truly incredible people in our community. During this video, you will learn about Grace, hear about the different types of volunteer options, and we will review our volunteer policies and procedures. After the video is over, you will be invited to schedule an orientation with our Director of Community Engagement to tour the facility and ask questions. Let's get started.
So this community has been planning for Grace since 2005, and in 2014 we finally got the chance to open up the one-stop center at the site of the former Gainesville Correctional Institute. For the past 2 years, we've been working on really bringing some of the best service providers in our community together into one location, and then working to really expand the shelter programs that we have and make sure that what we're doing is getting people off of the streets and into housing as quickly as possible. Since we started, we have grown to now have 115 beds of emergency shelter on any given night. We've got 20 of the best providers in this community, ranging from UF's Mobile Medical Clinic to Meridian Behavioral Health Care. We've got the Helping Hands Clinic. We've got Florida Department of Children and Families, the VA, Volunteers of America, and pretty much everybody in between. The idea is that you no longer have to know where the help that you need is in this community. You just need to know to show up to Grace, and we'll help you do the rest from there.
So you might be wondering how to get involved. First, let's take a look at our on-site volunteer opportunities. Grace is open 24/7, so even if you have strict schedule limitations, there are many ways you may be able to help out. Our goal is to find the best mutually beneficial volunteer position for you, one in which you enjoy visiting Grace to help out and you'll simultaneously provide a service that our guests can benefit from. We also have some off-site volunteer positions available in case you are not able to visit Grace on a regular basis or you prefer to work from home.
In order for you to have the best volunteer experience possible at Grace, let's review our volunteer policies and procedures. This will ensure that you know what to expect in your role as a volunteer at Grace. Following these policies helps our operations flow smoothly and allows our staff to focus on giving the most attention possible to our guests in need. You will have an opportunity to ask questions regarding these policies when you meet in person with our Director of Community Engagement.
We ask our volunteers to treat our guests and residents with respect and dignity as we strive to create an atmosphere where anyone who needs services will be met with compassion. We ask our volunteers to wear respectful attire and dress appropriately for Cafe 131 shifts with closed-toed, non-slip shoes, hair tied back, and no jewelry or watches. We ask that volunteers wear their name tags during all shifts and remove them during breaks from volunteering. Volunteers will not represent Grace online or on social media.
Volunteers are required to schedule all shifts online and are responsible for canceling shifts they cannot attend up to 1 day in advance. We will provide step-by-step instructions on how to enroll and schedule later on in the video.
Grace welcomes people from all backgrounds and belief systems. Volunteers must not proselytize religious or political views, including verbally or with written materials. Religious or political materials cannot be openly distributed at Grace, and doing so may result in being asked to leave the premises. All religious or political services will take place as a scheduled event in one of our event buildings or rooms, and can be scheduled through our Director of Community Engagement.
At Grace, we have no eligibility requirement for our guests. Therefore, all Grace volunteers must be 18 years or older to participate without supervision. We ask that youth volunteers are 14 years or older and are accompanied by an adult supervisor 100% of their time at Grace.
Please assist us by reporting all damages or missing property to Grace staff. If you are issued a radio during your volunteer shift, Please return it to an advocate or staff member at the end of your shift. As a janitorial service is not currently in our budget, all volunteer workshop instructors who utilize a room or building are required to clean thoroughly and ensure that the space is locked after each use.
Volunteers will always defer to the rules set by Grace staff. Volunteers will not intervene in any conflicts between residents and will instead seek staff support immediately upon witnessing the escalation of a conflict. Volunteers do not have the authority to enforce Grace rules or enact bans. Volunteers are not to enter any designated staff-only areas or offices.
Volunteers will develop and maintain healthy professional relationships with Grace residents. While representing Grace, volunteers will not give out personal information, social media contacts, phone numbers, addresses, money, or rides to guests of Grace. While actively volunteering, volunteers will not enter guest campgrounds, RVs, or tents. Volunteers will not ride in guest vehicles.
Grace is an approved work site for court-ordered community service hours. Grace staff is not responsible for community service paperwork. All community service volunteers will arrive with their carbon copy paperwork. They will have a staff member who witnesses their hours sign off on each shift. Community service volunteers are required to schedule a time with the Director of Community Engagement to have their completed hours sheet signed at the end of each service. Community service volunteers have a right to privacy regarding their court-ordered hours and are not required to reveal the reason for completing hours to anyone.
It is policy at Grace that we do not discriminate on basis of race, religion, color, gender identity, age, national origin, sexual orientation, or disability. Any discrimination will not be tolerated and is strictly prohibited. It is imperative that volunteers uphold this policy throughout their interactions with guests, residents, staff members, and other volunteers. If any volunteer feels that they have become a victim of any type of discriminatory conduct, they should immediately contact the Director of Community Engagement.
Sexual harassment, inappropriate contact, and gender-based discrimination, including but not limited to unwanted or unwelcome sexual advances, inappropriate sexual comments or conversations, and/or physical contact that is sexually oriented and is considered unacceptable by the target of abuse will not be tolerated and is strictly prohibited. It is imperative that volunteers uphold this policy throughout their interactions with residents, guests, staff members, and other volunteers. If any volunteers feel that they become a victim of any type of harassment, they should immediately contact the Director of Community Engagement.
Grace does not allow photos or videography of guests or residents. Volunteers will never give out any information about persons receiving services at Grace to anyone, including other residents, for any reason. Volunteers will not confirm or deny that a resident is present at the shelter. If a caller is trying to locate a guest or resident, an appropriate response would be, "I cannot confirm or deny if that individual is here. However, I can take a message for them and post it to our message board for you." Volunteers will not use any guest's full name over the radio or phone. Volunteers will forward all urgent requests for resident information to Grace staff. Volunteers will defer all media inquiries to our Executive Director, Teresa Lowe, or our Operations Director, John DeCarmine.
Thanks for reviewing the Grace volunteer policies with us. To obtain your copy, be sure to download or print the volunteer handbook provided on the first page of the volunteer website. If you feel you understand and can agree to our policies, please print and sign the signature sheet. We require our volunteers to schedule their visits online so that we know when and where to schedule additional assistance, and to generate a monthly and yearly report of our volunteer activity. You can sign up to volunteer at our website, gracemarketplace.org, by clicking the Volunteer Now button. After you've filled out the enrollment form, you will receive a username and password via email, which will allow you to access the volunteer schedule. Once you've logged in, you can click on the Full Schedules tab to see all available volunteer shifts. To sign up for a shift, simply click the Volunteer Now button. If you are the director of a group and are interested in purchasing and preparing a meal for the guests of Grace, please visit gracemarketplace.org/meals to download or print our meal group information packet. You can also view a calendar of our available meal dates on this webpage. If you haven't already done so, we now invite you to schedule an in-person orientation with our Director of Community Engagement, during which you'll hand in your signed policies form, take a tour of Grace, ask any outstanding questions, and receive your official Grace volunteer badge. You can find our orientation dates listed on the online volunteer schedule. These are offered twice monthly. If you are unable to attend the listed dates and times, please email volunteer@gracemarketplace.org to request another option. If you have never visited Grace before, please be aware that some GPS devices do not interpret our address correctly and may misdirect you. Our correct location can be found at gracemarketplace.org/location.
On behalf of the Alachua County Coalition for the Homeless and Hungry and Grace, we'd like to thank you for your time spent volunteering with us. If you feel strongly about ending homelessness in Alachua County, we invite you to go to our website and become a monthly donor. Thanks again for your time.